Imagine a small country, smaller than the state of Indiana, controlling trade across Africa, Asia, and South America. 500 years ago, that country was Portugal. With a population of barely 1 million people, Portugal built something the world had never seen before, the first global empire in human history. How did such a tiny kingdom change the world? The answer begins on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. In the early 1400s, Portugal was a small kingdom in Western Europe. It sat on the far edge of the continent, facing the vast Atlantic Ocean. To the east stood its powerful neighbor, Spain. To the south lay the Muslim kingdoms of North Africa. Portugal had limited land, limited resources, and limited power. But it had something else: a long coastline and a deep connection to the sea. For centuries, European trade with Asia depended on land routes across the Middle East. Spices, silk, and precious goods traveled through long and dangerous paths controlled by powerful empires. These routes were expensive, slow, and risky. If Portugal could find a sea route to Asia, everything would change. Spices alone were worth fortunes in Europe. A direct ocean route could make Portugal incredibly rich, but no European kingdom had ever sailed that far. The oceans were unknown, and many believed that monsters and deadly storms waited beyond the horizon. Still, the Portuguese were willing to try. One man helped turn this dream into a national mission. His name was Prince Henry the Navigator. In the early 15th century, Prince Henry began funding voyages along the west coast of Africa. His goal was bold: discover new lands, find gold, and most importantly, reach Asia by sea. At the time, European ships rarely sailed far from shore, but Portuguese sailors began pushing further and further south along the African coast. Each voyage brought new knowledge, new maps, new winds, new ocean currents. Shipbuilders in Portugal also developed a revolutionary vessel, the caravel. Fast, light, and perfect for long ocean journeys. Slowly, the Portuguese began unlocking the secrets of the Atlantic. But the greatest challenge still remained: reaching the Indian Ocean. In 1488, a Portuguese explorer finally achieved something extraordinary. His name was Bartolomeu Dias. After months at sea, his ships rounded the southern tip of Africa. He had discovered the Cape of Good Hope. For the first time, Europeans knew it was possible to sail from the Atlantic Ocean into the Indian Ocean. The route to Asia was within reach. 10 years later, another Portuguese sailor changed history forever. His name was Vasco da Gama. In 1498, after an epic voyage around Africa, his fleet reached India. Europe had finally found a direct sea route to Asia. The spice trade would never be the same again. But that was not the end of Portugal's discoveries. Just 2 years later, in 1500, another expedition made an unexpected discovery. Led by Pedro Álvares Cabral, Portuguese ships sailing toward India encountered a vast new land across the Atlantic. That land would become Brazil. Within a few decades, Portuguese explorers had connected Europe, Africa, Asia, and South America. No civilization had ever done this before. Portugal moved quickly to control these new routes. Instead of conquering massive territories, the Portuguese built a network of strategic ports and fortresses. They appeared across the globe, from Goa in India, to Malacca in Southeast Asia, to Macau on the coast of China. These ports allowed Portugal to dominate the spice trade. Ships filled with pepper, cinnamon, and cloves sailed back to Europe every year, and the profits were enormous. Lisbon quickly became one of the richest cities in Europe. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Portugal began developing its colony in Brazil. Sugar plantations transformed Brazil into one of the most valuable territories in the world. Portuguese ships now crossed the oceans constantly. They carried spices from Asia, gold and sugar from Brazil, ivory and slaves from Africa. By the early 1500s, Portuguese merchants and sailors were present in nearly every major ocean. The Portuguese Empire stretched across 4 continents, and all of it was controlled from a small kingdom on the edge of Europe. Portugal had created something entirely new: a global trading network. Goods from Asia could now reach Europe faster than ever before. New foods, ideas, and technologies began moving between continents. The world was becoming connected. In many ways, Portugal helped start the first wave of globalization. Other European powers quickly took notice. Spain, England, and the Netherlands would soon follow Portugal's example. But Portugal was the first. For nearly a century, Portuguese ships dominated the oceans. Their navigators mapped new routes, their merchants controlled global trade, and their explorers reshaped the map of the world. Today, Portugal is a peaceful country on the western edge of Europe, but 500 years ago, it was the center of a global empire. A kingdom with barely 1 million people had connected the continents. And in doing so, Portugal helped transform the world into the global system we know today, all from a small nation that dared to sail into the unknown.